I think the team of experts was the perfect formula for that. Biodiversity, decarbonisation, waste, water, energy. And as I say, it enabled us to scale up quite quickly.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Fiella, and welcome to another episode of the Golf Sustainability Podcast. Very excited about our conversation today as it features, I think, a really great team of committed sustainability experts. It's my pleasure to welcome Golf Ireland's Head of Sustainability, Anne Courtney, and Gráinne Kelleher, who's the sustainability consultant to Golf Ireland. This is going to be a fascinating conversation covering the extremely comprehensive and well thought through sustainability program that they're leading for the golf industry in Ireland. Anne and Gráinne, thank you very much for being here and welcome to the Golf Sustainability Podcast.
Thank you, John, for having us.
Thank you, John.
So let's start by having each of you tell us a little about your current role at Golf Ireland. And Anne, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, John. As you say, I'm Head of Sustainability at Golf Ireland. I'm in the role just over 2 years. My background is of over 25 years business experience. I was also finance director and chair of my local club for 6 years. It's Killarney Golf and Fishing Club in the southwest of Ireland, which was host to the Irish Open on numerous occasions. And I also upskilled a number of years ago in relation to sustainability. So I suppose when the role came up in Golf Ireland, I was a natural fit for the position encompassing the golf, the business and the sustainability.
Gráinne, how about you?
So thanks, John. I own my own consultancy business called Green Broker Consulting, and I consult broadly on sustainability, and that's all aspects of sustainability. Actually, I try not to use the word. So we talk about financial sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social sustainability. I assist all types of organisations across lots of different sectors, not just sport and not just golf. And I help them really with their sustainability journey. So whether they're a for-profit, a not-for-profit, or a not just profit, I deal with all different types of organisations. So what I do with them, I look at where they're at in terms of their journey. I look at what their priorities are, what actions they might be thinking about, how we might fund the actions that they want to do, their successes, what success looks like for them, how we might measure that, and how we'd report on that. And in terms of my role then in Golf Ireland, I'm one of 4 consultants that work with Golf Ireland, along with Laura Lahiff on sustainability generally, Jim Young on decarbonisation and energy, and Alan Lauder, who's an ecologist who works as a consultant also to Golf Ireland. I suppose my role really is about engaging with clubs, meeting them where they're at. We really focus in on that, listening to them, understanding what's priority for them, understanding their financial situation, looking at what actions we might take together, and then really work together, hold their hands to implement what they want to put in place around sustainability in their clubs. My particular area of expertise is waste. So work with clubs a lot on reducing waste and diverting waste from landfill, funding side of things, certification and Geo Encore certification. And I suppose the approach I like to take is very much proactive encouragement, hand-holding, and bringing clubs along.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to see how your skills and experience are obviously very complementary, and with deep experience in golf, and Gráinne, your experience in sustainability. Frankly, as you describe your role and your background, Gráinne, I wish we had some people like you here in the U.S. because many courses and organizations could use the type of help and support that you're giving to Anne and Golf Ireland. So great to have you both here with us. As some of our listeners may not be familiar with Golf Ireland's activities, Anne, can you tell us about the overall scope of Golf Ireland's work before we dive into the details of your sustainability program?
Okay, so Golf Ireland is the governing body for golf in Ireland, and that's across Ireland, both north and south. Our chief executive is Mark Kennelly, and he leads the organisation, which is a new organisation established in 2021. We have a staff of over 55 people, and we have over 500 volunteers contributing to the running of events and tournaments in Ireland. From a tourism perspective and an economic value, golf adds circa 720 million of economic value to the industry each year, is responsible for directly employing 15,600 people. Over the last number of years, we have driven the game by 30%. The balance between women and men in golf is 20% women, 80% men. We have 236,000 registered members, and we have another 350,000 people that play golf on a regular basis. We have 376 affiliated clubs across Ireland. We're also involved in the hosting of both numerous national and international events. Recent ones that you'd know about is the Open in Royal Portrush. We also have the KPMG Women's Irish Open in Carton House, the Amagen Irish Open at the K Club, and we're leading up to the Walker Cup in Lahinch Golf Club, and also the Ryder Cup next year in Adair that we're very excited about.
Wow, this is a big year for Golf Ireland. I'll actually get a chance to visit Lahinch in May when I'll be doing an Ireland tour with my son to celebrate my 70th birthday, and we'll be hitting some of your finest courses. And I didn't realize the Walker Cup was there this year, so that'll make our visit to Lahinch very special.
And you'll be very welcome, and I'm sure we'll win you over with the quality of our products here in Ireland.
Yeah, well, I've had the good fortune of playing a couple of courses in Northern Ireland, and I love Dublin, and we're really looking forward to our trip. So good luck this year, because you certainly have a lot going on.
Thank you.
When we first talked a couple of months ago, I was fascinated by the scope of the program, actually, and how it got started. So, Anne, maybe you could tell us a little about the origin story of your sustainability program. How did it all come about?
Yeah, as I say, I came into the role about just over 2 years ago, and I suppose I started with a blank canvas, which sounds great in many ways, but there's both pros and cons to that. So I suppose the first couple of months was looking at research and effectively getting acquainted with our stakeholders firstly, and equally then having conversations with the clubs and seeing what their needs and requirements were. And I suppose a lot of the time was listening carefully, and then we moved forward to developing our strategy on sustainability. Golf Ireland had an overall strategy which sustainability formed part of, but we decided to develop our own strategy, which is called Drive the Green. And this was launched at our national AGM, which is where all the clubs in Ireland come to attend our AGM, and that was in March 2024. And I suppose, again, it's great to have a strategy, but then you have to put it into action. So I suddenly realised the enormity of the task in relation to, as I say, I kind of see it threefold: leading the organisation itself, assisting our 376 affiliated clubs across Ireland, and also be able to assist on events and tournaments. So we decided to pull together a team of experts. And I'm delighted to say that the Board of Golf Ireland, that are made up of 13 volunteers, together with the senior management team. And I also have a National Sustainability Committee that helped me guide in relation to sustainability. So we agreed the format of employing and working with consultants such as Gráinne, Jim, Alan, our ecologist, and we also partnered with the Geo Foundation for Sustainable Golf that many of your listeners will be familiar with, and we also partnered with the ATPI, who are the Turf Association of Ireland. So we set out about implementing our strategy and developing a programme which is bespoke and personal, and it's our Sustainability Leaders Programme.
One of the things that really impresses me with what you've done, Anne, in starting the program and building it out is that I often say to people that sustainability is a team sport. And it sounds like you recognize from the very beginning that you were going to need a team of people and a group to make this program happen. So I think you've gone about I'd like others to follow your example, frankly, in terms of those listening to the podcast who are just getting started. Assembling a team is really important, and you've done a great job of that, obviously.
Thank you, John. And I suppose really when I was looking at it, I wanted to see how best we could add value and how we could scale up. So I think the team of experts was the perfect formula for that, because it ensured that the advice we were given was the best advice in each of the areas. If you think of the large areas we have: biodiversity, decarbonisation, waste, water, energy. And as I say, it enabled us to scale up quite quickly.
Yeah, super. Well, the scope of the Driving the Green program is quite comprehensive, and I'm really interested in getting our listeners kind of a peek into the individual elements of Driving the Green. Gráinne, would you maybe kind of take us through the four key pillars of the program?
Surely. So when the strategy was set out and articulated the vision already, and I suppose what Anne and the team of experts came up with was the sort of four pillars that the strategy would work under. And then from that, specific actions that would come out of it. So the first of those pillars is, I should say, fostering nature. And within that, you have landscape and biodiversity, you have turf grass management, and you have pollution prevention, which are kind of linked. And I suppose, what does that mean on the ground? And what we've implemented, for example, ecology audit that a number of clubs in Ireland was done in a number of clubs in Ireland last year, and we have many more planned for this year. So from that comes a report, and the club has a 5 to 10 year plan in terms of their ecology and their biodiversity for their golf course. And one of the other things that we did was a collaboration with the Turf Association in Ireland, and there was a tool created, a portal created, where clubs could log their pesticide use. And because that's something that has become law in Ireland, from the 1st of January, you have to log digitally your pesticide use. So that's sort of two practical things under that pillar of fostering nature. The next pillar then is conserving resources. And within that, you'd find energy, water stewardship, and circularity. And I suppose just an example of that, in terms of engaging with the clubs, we have the Sustainable Energy Ireland, which is a government body who's been really, really helpful in terms of helping businesses decarbonise. And as part of that, they offer a free energy audit. So we would help clubs get signed up for that, and we'd facilitate that with them. And that gives sort of a good picture of a club and how they're doing in terms of their energy. It gives a holistic view of the clubhouse and the course and areas that they can improve in. And with that, then Jim Young, the decarbonisation expert, would get access to energy bills from the club. And with using both of those things together, we now have a very comprehensive picture of a club and their energy use, and what are the opportunities for them to change and to decarbonise and to move into more renewable types of energy, and really importantly, how do they fund that? So that's kind of where we help out. The third pillar then is strengthening communities. And that's very much around human health and well-being. And look, we all know the benefits of playing golf. There are plenty. There's plenty of research done around that, which is great. Nothing like being in the outdoors. And then I suppose the outreach and the inclusivity and the education and the charitable aspect of golf. So some of the things that have been happening on the ground around that. Look, there's lots of charity events that happen in golf courses around Ireland for fantastic causes. But we have, and I think mentioned this, the increase in female participation and youth participation in golf has been phenomenal over the last couple of years. And that's something that Golf Ireland have driven hugely. But the other thing that within that pillar that we're trying to do is early on in the education system to get children interested in golf in terms of a sport, but also as potentially as a career. So that's another area that we're working on. So, and just creating local employment in that regard. And the last pillar then is the all encompassing and comprehensive one, tackling climate action. And, this is, I suppose, all the things we just talked about, whether it's nature, biodiversity, energy, water, waste. they're all things that are really important in tackling climate change. And, we've signed up with, as Anne mentioned, with the Geo Foundation. So a lot of our clubs are now on the journey of getting Geo certified. And within that, and as part of that, they would establish their carbon footprint. But equally, the amount of carbon they sequester, because lots of golf clubs have huge capacity to sequester carbon as well, and some of them are sequestering an awful lot with trees and that type of thing on the course. So that's really it in terms of the 4 pillars and what's included in them. And I suppose some practical examples of, because Anne mentioned it's well and good to have a strategy and have pillars and have it all nice and dolled up on paper, but really it has to hit the ground, and it has to resonate with the people, in the front line. And that's really what we try and do.
Gráinne, you make it sound so simple.
The right thing is always simple.
There's so much there in the program details that you shared. It's interesting in general here in the States. Of the pillars, kind of water conservation is probably the biggest issue here for many clubs to deal with, especially those in the Southwest and in warmer climates. What you're doing with pesticides and this digital recording that every course is required to do, I think is an interesting thing that could be done here. I know that the number of pesticides that are allowed for use in Europe is far shorter than the pesticide use here. But that issue of water is really the big issue here.
Yeah, John, just in terms of water, and I didn't reference it a huge amount when I spoke about the programme, but that is equally a huge... Now, it's hard to believe, Ireland, that we're worried about water. We do get a lot of rain. But it's amazing. The east coast of Ireland and the west coast of Ireland, there's a massive difference in terms of rainfall. And it tends to come... You get the rainfall in winter, and you get less of it in the summertime. So we've, and Golf Ireland have facilitated webinars around this. We have a couple of clubs on the East Coast now that are about to become self-sufficient in terms of their water. And that's absolutely through harvesting rainwater from roofs, but also runoff water, and having the ponds to store it. So then in the summertime, when it gets hot and we've less rain on the East Coast, that water feeds into it's filtered and it feeds into their irrigation system. So it's pretty much circular, I suppose, and self-sufficient, which is great. So I think water is a big issue for every country.
How about the topic of coastal erosion? I know that's obviously limited probably to links courses that are right on the sea. Here at some courses in the States, it's been a big issue. Seminole recently had to do a major renovation project to address both a rising water table and coastal erosion. When I had the chance to play at North Berwick in Scotland, there were a couple of holes that were clearly being impacted by coastal erosion. Is that an issue for any courses in Ireland, and is it something that you're starting to deal with?
Look, we're an island nation. So, I mean, a lot of the golf clubs that people love playing on the West Coast and the East Coast, they're on the coast. So they have certainly huge challenges around coastal erosion. And they're obviously trying to protect themselves for the future.
Yeah, and I suppose we're also working with the RNA, who are the governing body for the federations. So they're working very closely with all the federations in relation to coastal erosion, and they've brought on expert consultants. So they are available, and the resources to clubs if they need advice in relation to it. And they have a number of case studies in that area, and are doing great work in that regard, and leading the way in guiding us in how best to take the next steps, particularly our links courses.
Okay, interesting. The issue of energy is interesting. I mean, I'm in the golf industry for 2 years, but I spent close to 20 years in corporate sustainability, where for Fortune 500 companies, really the big issue is around emission reduction, reducing the amount of energy they use, adopting renewable energy. It's not as big an issue in golf for obvious reasons. But when I visited Royal Portrush, I had a chance to spend some time with Graham Beat, and he's actually been on the show. And they had a pretty broad commitment to reducing their carbon footprint. They were installing solar. They were converting the buggies from gas to electric, and they were doing some things with HVO, which I guess is hydrogenated vegetable oil, as a fuel source. Was that unique to them because they were getting ready for the open and they were trying to make a sustainability commitment and message, or is that type of focus on energy reduction and reducing emissions, is that something that's taking place across the country?
Yeah, look, I think it's a very genuine commitment. It's not even a commitment to tell a story. It's very much a genuine commitment, and not only for decarbonisation and to reduce your carbon footprint, but generally what we're finding, although there's generally a capital required to invest up front, the cost of running renewable energy is far cheaper than it is, in terms of if you're to use oil or gas. So there's huge cost savings to be achieved as well. So there's definitely a very genuine commitment. That's, I suppose, in one sense in Ireland, that is helped by the government in Ireland, because there are a lot of programs that the government has put in place to assist people and companies and organisation and households to invest in solar panels or whatever to decarbonise. So that makes the transition a little bit easier. That said, there's sometimes a gap for the clubs that don't have as much money. There's still that gap in terms of funding. So even though they know, if you look at it as a pure business investment, you look at, say, you invest that and your bills are going to be like 20% of what they are today. It's a no-brainer in terms of investment, but you still have to have the capital up front. But in fairness, yeah, the government in Ireland has done a lot to accelerate that. So I would say it's very genuine and it's very real for all the right reasons.
I'm glad we've zeroed in on this point of economic sustainability and environmental sustainability. Gráinne, you mentioned it early on in your introduction, is that's kind of a key focus of your practice and your philosophy. What I have found over time is that there's this, I refer to it as a curve, as the enlightenment curve, and kind of new people to sustainability. There's this perception that, well, if to be sustainable, it's going to cost me a lot of money and I can't afford to do it. And the only sustainability I care about is economic sustainability. As people focus in the early stages on ways that they could be more environmentally responsible and actually reduce their cost, and they see how being green can make more green, people then start to catch on. Here in the States, I would say there's still, particularly with independently owned courses, people are still at that first stage where they're concerned about the costs associated with it. Did you have much of a challenge getting people on board with the fact that environmental sustainability can lead to greater economic sustainability, or was it not a challenge? Kind of what was clearing that hurdle like for you in your program? Because it sounds like you've got a lot of courses embracing what it is you're doing.
Yeah, look, I think the really important thing when you start off, I'm kind of a fan of not mentioning sustainability, because I think it's probably the most overused and the most misunderstood word in the dictionary, in the English dictionary. So sometimes I try not to use it. But if I do use it, I start off with the financial sustainability piece. I just say, people often think, well, the environment is here and profit is over here, and they're opposite ends of the scale. And I say, no. Those two things can work really well together in harmony. They're friends. You just have to find the sweet spot. So I often start off the conversation talking about financial sustainability and the three-legged stool. So I say, like, that is what sustainability in essence, for something to be sustainable in the long run, for a business to be sustainable in the long run, there's three legs to it. It has to be financially sustainable. It has to be sustainable in terms of the environment, and it has to be sustainable in terms of its people and the community that it sits in. And if one of those aren't being dealt with properly or not being given equal attention, one of the legs on the three-legged stool gets wobbly, and then it becomes unsustainable. And that's really the only reason we use the word sustainable, because we've become unsustainable. So I often like to start with financial, and then you just see the shoulders drop, because people realize, okay, this all makes sense. I can see, like, you can do the right thing by the environment, you can do the right thing by your people, and you can save money. Wow. I mean, how cool is that? So that tends to land well.
Yeah, and I suppose, John, the other side of it is, from a club's perspective, when they learn of how other clubs are doing in terms of business and sustainability, and I suppose we have one club who is a good example of an energy costs are incredibly high in Ireland at the moment, and a lot of clubs would be paying 2 and 3 times the rates they were paying in 2019. So it's not sustainable. After wages, it would be their biggest cost. So we've one club at the moment, and their energy bills would have been around 100,000. They're after retrofitting their building, so the costs have now come down to 25,000 in the space of a year and a half, and they're heading towards 18,000. Now, if we're a great believer, both Gráinne and I come from business backgrounds. We're a great believer the figures do the talking. You put that up before any club, and instantly they're interested in it and finding out more as to how their club can be equivalent to that.
That's interesting. That's a sound bite I'm going to carry with me. Let the figures do the talking. Thank you for that. That was a really excellent review of the program and the approach you've taken to get it implemented. And this next question, I guess I'd like both of you to touch on, and maybe you could go first. What accomplishments are you most proud of?
I suppose, look, it's been a busy 18 to 24 months, so there's been lots, but I suppose interestingly, it's the level of engagement. And I suppose in Ireland, we really are pushing an open door with our golf clubs. They're all interested to do the right thing, and they're keen to get going. But a bit like all of us, whether we're doing it at home or, we're doing it in a business sense or in a club, they want to ensure that what they're doing is best practice. So I think that's where the experts come in, where they have free access to the best advice, and they're ensuring what they do for their club is the right thing. The second thing that I'm proud of is the fact of the different type of engagement at the club. It's not just the board and the management team, it's also numerous others. So we have the greenkeepers and their team, we have volunteers. And just to give you an example, we have one club on the biodiversity side, and they have 50 volunteers solely on biodiversity alone. So again, I think it's the level of engagement and participation that's there right across the club. You often have people that aren't interested in roles such as captains and presidents, but have years of experience in their own sector from a work perspective, and they're quite happy to add value to their existing club to show and share their expertise there. So for me, they're kind of the wins in relation to it.
Thank you for giving a shout out to the greenkeepers. They are the unsung heroes of the golf world, and they play such a critical role.
Yeah, and I think even more so, I think if you think about it, they were long, doing work in sustainability long before the rest of us came to the sector. So, particularly in terms of targets, in Ireland, we knew the greenkeepers were doing great work. And now when we have the portal and certifiable data, we can very easily see the great work the greenkeepers have been doing for years. And it certainly will help us as a nation meet our targets in that regard.
Excellent. Gráinne, how about you? What are your thoughts on the accomplishments you're most proud of?
Yes, so proud of everything that Anne has mentioned there. As Anne said, it's been a busy time, but very rewarding. I suppose I'm very proud of the clubs themselves and the people within the clubs and the trust they've put in the program and how they've embraced it. And I suppose that has brought momentum to the program. And encouraged others to get involved. And I just feel like we're knocking on an open door now, which is fantastic. So very proud of them. Very proud, just on a practical level, very proud of the audits that we would have conducted on the golf courses, the ecology audits, 33 done last year, another 40 planned for this year. And a waiting list. So it just goes to show how popular and useful people feel this is. And it gives them a plan, as I said earlier, for 5 to 10 years in terms of their ecology. The amount of clubs that have completed the energy audits, established baseline in terms of their footprint, their energy use, and also the amount of people that have signed up to the to be geo certified or to the on-course portal. So yeah, so very proud of all those things.
You've mentioned Geo a couple of times and the on-course portal. I know Jonathan Smith. I've had him on the show. I'll actually meeting with some folks from Geo that'll be here in Orlando, Florida, for the Superintendents Association event next week. It's the equivalent to your BIGA group, and they are, in terms of organizations trying to support the golf industry globally, they're without question, in my mind, the leader. And they're doing great work. I'd frankly like to see them much more active here in the States, and hopefully they're on the road to making that happen. But maybe just a minute here on Geo, because I think they really do great work. What have been the biggest benefits of kind of partnering with them and having as a related partner to the Golf Ireland Driving the Green program?
Happy to jump in first. Look, I work across a number of industries, and I see different portals, I see different certification tools, and I have to say the on-course one is extremely user-friendly. And it allows you to dip in and out as much as you like. So it's a very fluid, it kind of meets people where they're at, but it's very structured, and it allows people to bit by bit sort of add information. When I connect with clubs about the portal, some of them mightn't have any interest in certification. And I say, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Each to their own. It's entirely their call. But what I say to them is, just the transient nature of golf clubs and the people that work in golf clubs and committees that are voluntary, that come and go, and information comes and goes on laptops or out in back pockets or whatever. I said, having a portal where you can put all your information in one place and decide who has access to that information within the club, it just mines that information for the club. And I suppose the other thing that we're finding more and more of now is just for corporate bookings and corporate golf and big competitions, it's kind of become something that it puts you up the ladder in terms of being attractive as a golf destination. So they'd be my 2 points on that. So I don't know, Anne, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, from my perspective, when I came into the role, as I say, I did a lot of research in the early months, and I obviously did a lot of research into Geo, and would have had numerous meetings with Jonathan. And really, it's the gold standard of sustainable golf out there. They're a not-for-profit. They're up and running for 20 plus years, and really, I could instantly see the value of partnering with them. They were the first partner we made in Golf Ireland, and we're delighted to have a partner and their expertise and guidance to work alongside. And I think the relationship has benefited both us and them in the terms of maybe we've taken a different strategy to maybe other federations, and we're probably a little bit different in the strategy we've taken. It isn't all encompassing in maybe just one or two areas. As I say, we really have looked at all the various areas, and that's why we offered the support. So for us, it was no brainer to go with the Geo Foundation. And the other thing in Ireland, we're very much, both Gráinne and I sit on business groups in terms of sustainability. Gráinne chairs, it's called the Kerry Tourism Industry Federation Sustainability Group, and I sit on that, and I also sit on the Killarney Chamber Group. But we're very cognizant of sustainable destinations, and I suppose one of our focuses was in bringing golf clubs back into the community and more active role. While we all play golf, we work and live in communities, and I think by us having certification for our golf clubs, again, I think it adds the value to Fáilte Ireland, Tourism Ireland, Tourism NI, in relation to when tourists are coming and looking at Ireland as a potential destination, that we have the certification in place for our golf clubs, and we're proud of that.
That's great to hear. I mean, the fact that you're starting to see decision making by end users, by golfers, by either corporate tour groups or by individuals, if the whole notion of a commitment to sustainability is starting to factor into that decision making, that is then really, now you're talking about the cost savings, but then you're also adding now revenue generation, which from an economic sustainability, if we could get to the point where we can really prove a golfer preference for sustainable golf courses. That'll be pretty cool. So I look forward to kind of hearing more and learning more about how that evolves. Well, look, you've got a lot to be proud of, and we have focused on the accomplishments, and you've both made sustainability sound very easy, but we know it's not. And tell us about some of the challenges that you faced in getting the program off the ground. And Gráinne, maybe we can have you tackle that.
Yeah, challenges. I could answer that question very quickly and say none, but that probably wouldn't be very useful to the listeners. I have to say there haven't been many, because I suppose to say why, I think it's going back to, and Anne touched on this earlier, it's back to she started with a blank canvas. She went out and about. She spoke to people. She listened very carefully. She took note of about 18 clubs when she was on her tour, that were genuinely interested in sustainability. So she decided to start with them, and then built out from that with the consultants, the sustainability strategy. So the building blocks were carefully put in place, and I think that's a really important starting point for any other country looking to put a similar program in place. I suppose that said, there are a couple of other things that are important to add to that. The fact that the program is free, I think that's really, really important, and that the advice that's given to clubs or offered to club through Golf Ireland is both free and it's impartial. Now there's a limit on that. Obviously, it's not forever, and we obviously have to spread our love. So I think really important on how you start and how you build your foundations, and you listen very carefully. That said, it's probably a challenge to engage kind of deep into clubs and broadly into clubs. You'll get some clubs where there's a couple of people that are interested, but it doesn't go beyond a couple of people, and you'll often find the greenkeepers will be in that cohort, and they're not maybe always heard or listened. So, and that's one of the things we're focusing on a lot this year. We're just about to embark on a roadshow now around Ireland, and it's really going deeper into clubs and engaging deeper, just so people understand more about that terrible word sustainability. What does it mean? What does it mean for the club? What does it mean to me as a player? Because a lot of players, golfers, they come to their club for a bit of peace. They want to be in nature and they want to have a good game of golf. And the last thing they want to hear is that that's going to be altered because we're trying to do all these funny, weird things and leaving bits of dead wood around the course, and a little bit more wilding for biodiversity and all those things. So these are the kind of things that they really need to understand the why. And most reasoning humans will, once you explain that and they understand, and although it'll alter a little bit and it mightn't look as pristine and manicured as typically we associate with golf clubs, there's a bigger picture and they get it. So meeting them where they're at, engaging with them, so getting the message out beyond the club management. That's a challenge, but it's a good challenge, and we're aware of it. So that's something we're certainly looking at. I genuinely think that planet and players can live in harmony. I definitely think that. I touched on this already, and I suppose the area of decarbonization, and that is the low-hanging fruit when it comes to climate, when it comes to cost saving as well. So, but sometimes accessing the capital to be able to invest in the solar panels, that's a challenge for clubs. People think all golf clubs have lots of money. That is the perception, but that's not the case in Ireland. We have the clubs that would be wealthy enough. We'd have the mid-range that would have a few quid to put back into the club, and we would have those that really struggle to keep their head above water. So it's finding capital for them, and that's something that we're working on at the moment, or in terms of even low percent finance to help them get on their way. Yeah, that's I suppose some of the challenges. So not a lot of challenges. I do think we're genuinely knocking on an open door, but a couple nonetheless, just to look out.
I like the way you're thinking about helping the clubs that are dealing with limited financial resources. You're trying to find ways to help them overcome that issue. So that's a great idea. wonderful program, and you've put together an incredible team. What's next for Driving the Green at Golf Ireland? And if we were to get together again 12 or 18 months from now, what would we be talking about?
Thanks, John. And as I say, look, we're only on, the start of our journey. I really would think that we're kind of up and running for the last 12 to 14 months. And I suppose we started off with driving engagement, and it's hard to believe that over a 12-month period, we have 27% of our clubs engaged in this program. But this year, as Gráinne mentioned there, we've kind of moved our focus slightly. So we're moving to kind of driving action and looking towards outcomes and results. So if we were to meet you in 18 months' time, I think what we would hope to have for you is a lot of update in relation to outcomes. We probably have 68 pilots running at the moment with various clubs. Equally, we're working with government departments in relation to various bits and pieces. I've just come from a conference on sustainability in sport, and we were the case study today for the conference. So I suppose from a personal perspective, I'd love that golf would be seen to be one of the leaders in sustainable sport. And really, as Gráinne alluded to, it's really just building on the foundations for the last number of years. I suppose we like to think that we're innovative, strategic. So always looking forward. We didn't touch on it here, but we actually have prioritised data at Golf Ireland. And, in so many of our case studies, it's a real priority. And I suppose really it's just to give us an understanding of where we are in relation to each of the areas, be it water, be it decarbonisation, be it funding, whatever it is, and the work that's being done at clubs. Because I think really only when we know from the information that's available can we then make better plans and improve the program as is and make improvements and help clubs further. But I think the data over the next, I would see a substantial amount being available at the end of this year and going into next year. And I think really that will give us the insight into making more better informed decisions. And it'll certainly help our board in relation to the next strategy around sustainable golf.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, you're focused on data. You're focused on the economics related to sustainability. You've put a great team together. You're kind of focused on, there's a real theme of helping your clubs be successful with sustainability. And I just think that's a great strategy and approach, philosophy. And I look forward to talking to you again in a year or so about those pilots, about those government programs, and about how the way you're using data is evolving. So I can't thank you both enough. You're super busy and you're at a conference and you found time to do this conversation. Thank you both. You have a lot to be proud of. It's a real privilege for me to be able to have this conversation with you and get to know you both. You're providing so many wonderful examples of ideas and approaches that I'd love for clubs in the States to follow and emulate. So thank you both very much for being with me today.
Thank you, John.
Pleasure, John. Thanks for having us.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this special episode of the Golf Sustainability Podcast. If you've learned anything or enjoyed the conversation that we've had here today, please subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends and colleagues about it. Stay tuned because we're committed to bringing more conversations with global leaders on golf sustainability to you on a regular basis throughout 2026. Thanks for being with us. Have a great year, and thank you.